We can't talk about Israel Keyes in the way that we normally talk about serial killers. We usually can start at the beginning and tell a story in a way that ultimately leads up to the person they become and the crimes they commit. But Israel flew so below the radar for most of his life that we can really only talk backwards and start from the moment he got caught. So, I'd like for you to join me on this journey, and I promise it'll all make sense in the end. With that being said, our study begins where Israel's ended. February 1st, 2012, at the Common Grounds Coffee Shop in Anchorage, Alaska. Samantha Koenig was a bartender at Common Grounds, which was less of a traditional coffee shop and more of a drive-up, standalone fixture in a parking lot. Samantha was closing that night. She was finishing up her nightly duties and getting ready to go home when a man approached the store and asked for an Americano. The interaction seemed normal enough at first, exchanging pleasantries and making small talk. Samantha then went to make the coffee. However, after a few moments, when she returned to the window, she realized something was gravely wrong. The man was wielding a gun and demanded that Samantha turn the lights off immediately. As all of this is being captured on security footage inside the coffee shop, the man then tells Samantha to reach into the cash register and pull out the money to give him. And as she does so, much to her horror, the man slowly begins climbing into the coffee shop window. Once inside, he leads her out of the coffee shop, across the parking lot, and out of view of the camera. This man was Israel Keyes. And I'm sure if you've worked in the service industry, we all know what a clopening is. Closing one day and then having to come in early the next day. Well, as you might imagine, Samantha did not show up for her shift the next morning. The barista that was supposed to work with Samantha that morning, after many attempts at calling her cell phone, actually ended up reporting her missing. Samantha was never late for a shift. And if something came up where she may be running a few minutes behind, she would always call. After she was reported missing, community search parties immediately assembled, searching for Samantha in areas from anywhere around the coffee shop to places she might be hanging out, to talking to her friends. They even scoured her social media. But unfortunately, 1.5 dreadful weeks went by, and they didn't hear anything. A break in the case came on February 24th, 2012. A text message was sent to her boyfriend's cell phone. It read, "Connor Park, under the sign of Albert. Ain't she purty?" So when they got to the park, they found a Ziploc bag pinned to a bulletin board under a lost dog flyer. The lost dog was Albert, like in the text message. Inside the Ziploc bag was an incredibly strange picture of Samantha, with that day's paper actually held up against her. There was also a ransom note for $30,000 to be deposited into Samantha's bank account. Samantha's face looked bleak, void of life, just sort of staring at the camera ahead. The authorities immediately put a watch onto Samantha's bank account. But what the family didn't know in that moment was the photo was of Samantha all right, but her eyes had been sewn open and makeup had been applied to her body and face post-mortem to make her look still alive. You see, after Israel kidnapped Samantha Koenig, he brought her back to a shed behind his house, the house where his then girlfriend and daughter were sleeping, raped her, and then murdered her, all in the same night. He left her body to freeze there in the cold Alaskan winter. The next day, he then proceeded to go on a cruise with his girlfriend and daughter that lasted around a week. Once he was back from that vacation, he thawed out the body of Samantha, raped her yet again, and took the ransom photo. Yeah, I know that's a lot to digest. But remember the watch that they put on Samantha's bank account? Yeah, After he returned from the cruise, Israel began using her debit card in several locations across the country until he was eventually caught leaving a bank in Lufkin, Texas. He was on a road trip on the way to his sister's wedding when he used the ATM card at a local bank. Authorities responded immediately. Israel was arrested promptly after presenting them with his Alaskan driver's license. His vehicle also contained several items belonging to Samantha. He was then swiftly extradited to Alaska, where he admitted to killing Samantha and ultimately getting caught by playing against his own rules. Don't ever kill close to home. Once in police custody, Keyes told investigators that he had driven Samantha's body to Matanuska Lake in a series of 3 trips. You see, he had completely dismembered her body and put the parts into a series of plastic trash bags. Once at the lake, he would drill a hole and go ice fishing. And while he was ice fishing, he would lower Samantha's body into the cold water below. He even went as far as to tell one investigator that he actually caught a fish while disposing of Samantha's body. He then took it home and cooked the fish and ate it. Authorities sent a dive team out to Matanuska Lake, where, sure enough, after several days of looking through the ice and water, Samantha's body was found in a series of black trash bags. Once investigators realized the type of offender they were facing at this point, they began to assume that Samantha may not be Keyes' only victim. Israel tells investigators that he feels like he can be 2 people very easily, and he's felt this way since he was around 14.